So, what if I told you that the real secrets to modern business strategy aren't hidden in the latest buzzwords? What if they're actually in the minds of an ancient general, a maverick fighter pilot, and get this, a pioneering engineer? Today, we're going to build a powerful, timeless framework that connects all three.
Disruption, agility, intelligence. I mean, you hear these words everywhere, right? We're just bombarded with them. But what do they actually mean when the rubber hits the road? Well, it turns out the real keys to mastering them come from those three very unlikely sources I just mentioned. So let's connect the dots.
Okay, let's jump right into our first pillar, situational awareness. You know, the modern strategist Simon Wardley just nails it when he says, you can't play the game if you can't even see the board. It's so simple, but so true. So, step one, before you do anything else, is to map your competitive landscape.
And Wardley is really serious about this. He literally says, I cannot emphasize more the importance of situational awareness before using these plays. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. Any move you make, any play you try to run without a clear map of what's going on, it's not strategy, it's just gambling. Pure and simple. You have to understand the landscape first. So where do so many companies get this wrong? Well, it's because they don't see that not all competitive change is created equal. We just throw that word disruption around for literally everything. But that's kind of like mistaking a slow, predictable tide for a chaotic, all-out naval battle. You'd prepare for those two things completely differently, wouldn't you? And this is exactly where having that map becomes so powerful. It helps us split apart two totally different kinds of change. On one side, you've got these predictable shifts, like when a product just naturally evolves into a utility. Think about cloud computing. That was like a tide you could see coming from miles. But on the other side, you have these totally unpredictable battles. You know, direct product versus product warfare. That's your classic feature-for-feature dogfight.
And this chart here really lays out the different games that are being played. So first, you've got that predictable shift to a utility. Yep, cloud computing again. Then, there's the head-to-head product slugfest, like the classic Apple versus BlackBerry showdown. And then, there's this third one, punctuated equilibrium. Okay, sounds a little academic, right? But all it really means is a sudden, massive explosion of change. Imagine going from a world of custom, handcrafted goods to mass production, practically overnight. The rules of the game just completely flip. Knowing which game you're actually playing, well, that's everything.
Okay, so you've got your map. You can see the terrain clearly. But what about the other players on that map? How in the world do you figure out what they're going to do? Well, that brings us to our second pillar. And for this, we're going to tap into the ancient wisdom of Sun Tzu and the art of intelligence.
And let me tell you, Sun Tzu does not pull any punches. He basically says that any leader who's too cheap to pay for good intelligence is putting their organization on a direct path to failure. He's making it absolutely crystal clear. Winning has nothing to do with luck or even just having the biggest budget. It's all about foreknowledge. It's about knowing your competitor's next move before they even make it.
And the amazing thing is, he doesn't just say, hey, go get some intelligence. No, he gives you a whole playbook broken down into 5 distinct types. You can even think about them in today's terms, right? Local intelligence, that's your on-the-ground market research. Inside intelligence, that's figuring out the other company's leadership. Live intelligence, your real-time data feeds. He even talks about expendable intelligence, which is basically what we'd now call shaping the narrative or even misinformation. It's a complete system for understanding the human element on your map.
But out of all 5 of these, there's one that he says is supreme. He calls it double intelligence, and he basically says it's the master key. So what is it? It's the art of turning your competitors' own spies against them. Now, why is that so incredibly powerful? Because it's the ultimate form of leverage. That one single source can prove or disprove everything else you think you know. It unlocks the entire board.
All right, so let's recap. You can see the board, and you have a pretty good idea of what's in their hand. So now what? How do you actually make the winning move? Well, this brings us to our third and final pillar, and to a legendary fighter pilot named John Boyd. We're talking about the speed of action. So Boyd came up with this brilliantly simple but incredibly powerful model for making decisions when you're under pressure. It's called the OODA loop. It's a cycle that just keeps going. First, you observe what's happening. Then you orient yourself, figure out what it all means in context. Then you decide what to do. And finally, you act. But here's the absolute genius of this whole thing. The goal isn't just to do the OODA loop. The real goal, as Boyd put it, is to operate inside your adversary's loop. What does that mean?
It means you go through your cycle of observing, orienting, deciding, and acting so much faster than your competitor that you make them purely reactive. You force them to respond to your moves. You cause them to completely unravel because their decisions are always a step behind reality. Eventually, they just fall apart.
And you can probably see where this is going. This is not just for fighter pilots in a dogfight. This thinking applies 100% to the market. It's all about getting inside your rival's mind-time space. It literally means shipping that game-changing new feature while your competitor is still stuck in a meeting trying to make sense of last quarter's market report. It's all about tempo.
So, what happens when we take all of this and put it together? What happens when we combine the brilliant landscape mapping of Wardley with the timeless human intelligence of Sun Tzu and the lightning-fast, decisive speed of Boyd? Well, what you get is the blueprint for the complete modern strategist.
And that brings us right to the core idea of this whole explainer, the strategic tripod. It's a framework that stands on three absolutely essential legs. First, you map the landscape to get that critical situational awareness. Second, you gain foreknowledge, using those timeless principles of intelligence. And third, you act with tempo, leveraging that OODA loop to outmaneuver everyone else. And here's the most important part. You need all three. Real strategy isn't about picking your favorite one. It's about weaving them together into one stable, incredibly powerful framework for action.
So there you have it. The framework is yours. You've got the tools to see the board, to anticipate the other players, and to act with decisive speed. And you know what? Those buzzwords from the beginning, disruption, agility, intelligence, they're not so empty anymore, are they? They're the legs of your tripod. So the only real question left is, what's your first move?